Well, the demo I made of the JJ-150 from Coombs Instruments received a lot of interest, and it seems there's some appetite for a comparison to the Nocturne Brain equivalent pedal. Now, this is not a sponsored video. I paid for these pedals with my own money. I've owned these pedals long enough now for them neither to be in the honeymoon review phase. And one thing about YouTube reviews, well, certainly I feel, is that most are fresh out of the box on or even pre-release day, and personally I would much rather review something that I've had time to get to know both at home and on the stage. Now, just to explain, the two pedals we are comparing today are the JJ-150 from Coombs Instruments and the Nocturne Brain equivalent, the El Pescadoro. Nocturne Brain actually offer two pedals that fit the bill as equivalents of the JJ-150, the Junior Barnyard, which is an octal tube preamp, and then what I have, the El Pescadoro, which has that preamp plus a Chess Records room reverb. As I said, that's the model that I have, and I have to say that the reverb and the preamp do combine to make for some wonderful tones. It's been on my pedal board since 2021, and I purchased the Coombs a few months ago, mainly out of curiosity. So both pedals are meant to replicate the sound of the original octal tube amps, like the Gibson EH-185 or EH-150. And for me, they both offer the opportunity to get vintage jazz guitar tones in the style of the legendary Charlie Christian. Now, I have a modern day version of that kind of amp, that early Gibson amp, and this is a vintage 47 VA185G, so I will mix that in with the comparison of the two pedals too. In terms of controls on the El Pescadoro, we have gain control, a switch to go between bass and guitar, a bright and woolly switch, and the bright certainly has more attack and the woolly is naturally softer and warmer. There is also this grit switch, which I believe this is 2 levels of pre-boost. I'll address the reverb later in the video, as we are here to really compare the octal preamps. As for the JJ-150, control-wise, we have gain, tone, volume, and then a dark bright switch, and a mic and instrument channel like the old amplifiers. Size-wise, the JJ-150 takes up less pedal board space, but then again the El Pescadoro is 2 effects in one. Both work with the standard 9V DC power, and I personally power them with the Seox DC7. Now, to give you a sense of what both pedals offer, I'll use 3 guitars: a Gibson L50 converted into an ES-150 from 1938, a Gibson Super 5, and then a Telecaster. In round 1, I will use this solid state Quilter Toneblock 202, followed by a direct comparison with the vintage 47 amp, and let's see if this pedal holds up to that tube amp tone. Now, we've heard both pedals with a solid state amp, but how would they work with a tube amp? So my main gigging amp is actually a Tone King Imperial Mark II. So let's do some comparisons of both pedals with that amp and then with the Vintage 47 as well. In terms of price, as of June 2025, the prices are as follows. The JJ-150 is $300 for the hand-wired version that I have, or $215 for the standard version, although I do think it's currently on sale for $199. The El Pescadoro is $239, the Junior Barnyard is $159. Obviously, if you're outside of America like myself, then you will have to factor in import fees, which I had to for purchasing both pedals. Now, both run sales sometimes, so it's worth following them both on social media or keeping an eye out on their websites for if and when they do. Ordering from either is very straightforward, just through the website. In both instances, you're buying from an individual and therefore supporting individuals, which I much prefer to do. So both are very helpful and quick to respond to any questions also. In terms of looks, Nocturne Brain definitely have their own thing going on, very distinctive and looking and characterful pedals. The El Pescadoro changes all of the time with different finishes. So, you know, essentially whichever one you get is limited edition, and you wouldn't necessarily be able to get the one I've got unless you manage to find it secondhand, which I think is really cool. The JJ-150 is maybe more understated in its appearance, but it's very elegant. I'm a sucker for details and just had to go for the hand-wired version with the more vintage looking Art Deco-ish controls. On looks, I think the Nocturne Brain wins for creativity, but they both look great. Let me address the reverb in the El Pescadoro. I don't think it's fair to obviously compare the two pedals based on the reverb, but some of you may be weighing up which one to buy and whether it's worth getting the El Pescadoro as you get two effects in one. So I'd like to play you a little bit to give you a sense of what tones you can get from it. Here I'm using the pedal on the rhythm guitar part to provide some wonderful sustain, and then for the lead, a more subtle reverb. If you're wondering what piece that was a piece of music called Oblivion by the legendary composer Astor Piazzolla. What I use this reverb in this pedal for is when I want a bit of atmosphere on an intense song. So I don't use it as a lot for my regular kind of reverb, as I tend to use either the Strymon Flint or the Golden Reverberator for that. But I'm sure like a blues player would make absolute killer use of this kind of reverb. Here's just a couple of the tones with that reverb for soloing in a more traditional jazz context. So which one do I prefer? This is hard, seriously hard. A question you might have also is, why do I have these pedals when I have that beautiful vintage 47 amp? Well, that's because I love it for lead tone, but personally find it, when I've gigged it, it's a little less to my taste for comping. So with the pedals, with my either the Quilter or the Tone King, I can have that vintage tone for lead, but for rhythm guitar, I much prefer the natural sound of the amp. As for which one is better or which would I recommend, the short answer is I would be happy with either, but I have done well over 600 gigs with the El Pescadoro, so I'm more used to dialing in the tones with it. And at a push, I'd probably go with that one, but there is seriously very little in it. As with many of these things, we may pick up on subtleties ourselves, but bandmates and most definitely audiences might not even notice. I'm naturally keen to know which you prefer the sound of based on what you've heard today. Please leave a comment below and fire away any questions you might have below. Don't forget jazz guitar videos here every Monday. Please check out a link to my Patreon in the description. But until next time, you take care.